We'd like to tell you about a project that we developed together on creating a pharmacy in a virtual world, and the virtual world we used in this project was Second Life. First of all, I'd just like to explain a little bit. This project is a collaborative project between the Center for Teaching and Learning at Umeå University, where we are educational developers, educational technologists, and the pharmacy program at Umeå University, where the teachers have been involved in using this virtual pharmacy on their courses. Perhaps I should also add that the pharmacy program is it's a distance program. It goes online, where students work. They work at home and they come into the university approximately 2 times per semester for practical laboratory work. So why did we decide to create a pharmacy in Second Life? Some people might think this was a little strange, but for us it was the need to develop or to train communication skills for the pharmacy students. Since they're distance students, they don't have as much opportunity as students on campus for training the communication skills they need to deal with customers, to be able to give advice, and for their future work. The communication training had been done earlier using role plays, both in the classroom and using Adobe Connect. But on evaluations from students, they have all commented that the role plays in the classroom didn't really work for them. They felt it was very difficult for them to visualize themselves as pharmacists when they could see, okay, this is my fellow student here. So they weren't particularly satisfied with how we were doing role plays. So we decided to develop this virtual pharmacy in Second Life so that they could be in what was to them an authentic learning environment. Okay. Some important aims that we had for the project before we started was that for the Center for Teaching and Learning, we needed to gain much more experience on what is necessary, how could we strengthen the communication exercises that existed, what kind of support were the teachers going to need if they were going to start working in a virtual environment, what kind of support were the students going to need to be able to develop their avatars and to work in this virtual environment. And luckily we were able to apply for special funding from the Flexible Education Project at Umeå University. Otherwise I realized that it's very difficult to develop this kind of environment on the normal funding that you receive.
Yes, and I'm going to talk about the building process in Second Life and also very short on the introduction of the students. And I'm going to show a film of the pharmacy. So before I started to build anything in Second Life, I had a couple of meetings with Hanna where she could specify her needs for the course, and I could get a sense of what the environment should look like. And we also established a collaboration with Scott Diener from the University of Auckland that has an extensive knowledge in the pedagogical use of Second Life. And the collaboration with Scott also led to us building the pharmacy on an island owned by the University of Auckland. While Second Life offers great possibilities to build abstract fantasy worlds, what we wanted to do here was to build a realistic environment. So my job started with going down to the local hospital pharmacy and taking photos of interior and shelves and so on. And after that I started to make drawings based on the meetings that I had with Hanna and the photos that I had taken at the pharmacy. And they say that Second Life has a steep learning curve, and for me that had never used Second Life, and with limited 3D modeling skills, I have built a kitchen on IKEA's home planner. So this learning curve at the beginning felt almost like a straight vertical line. It was very hard. But with great help from online resources and from Scott Diener at Auckland University, I soon got pretty fast on building objects in Second Life. And I should say here also that the pharmacy at this point haven't got any interactivity. What we have built now is a realistic environment, but that we hope in time will also have or give the students possibilities to pick up things from the shelves, and perhaps also to connect the computers in the virtual pharmacy to software used in real pharmacies. And long before the building process started, we did a lot of research on the pedagogical use of Second Life. And a frequently recurring fact is this steep learning curve and how long it takes for students to get used on how to control your avatar in a 3D world, and especially if they haven't used similar platforms earlier. So with that in mind, we decided to design an introduction for the students that would give them the skills that they would need to complete the Second Life section in Hanna's course. So we gathered all the students in a computer lab in Umeå and guided them through a number of important aspects on how to control your avatar, how to communicate, how do they configure their computers when at home, and perhaps the most important thing of all, how to dress your avatar. And that's an important fact also, because the avatar in Second Life is, in a sense, an extension of yourself, and you have to have some sort of connection with that. Yes, that was a short summary on how we built the pharmacy and how we introduced the students to it.
So I'm going to talk a bit about the assignment that we did in Second Life, and it was an assignment in the course Pharmacotherapy in the Elderly, and that is a course in the third year, an elective course in the Bachelor of Pharmacy program. And this is a role play that before we did this written instead, and for this project we put this role play in Second Life. So the student plays the role of the pharmacist, and I, as a teacher, I play the role of a customer. I am a daughter of an Alzheimer's patient, and the student has to provide me with information about medication, regarding medication for Alzheimer's disease. And I'm very worried, and I have a lot of questions for this pharmacist. And the role play was recorded. We used Camtasia, and I assessed it in Second Life. What we also did was we had an instant individual feedback from me in Second Life. So first we did this communication with the pharmacist and me. We had this communication, and then afterwards we went into a room that you saw on the end of the film that Hans-Erik showed you, where we sat down and the students got this instant feedback. And we also included a group discussion in this afterwards. When everybody had done this, we had a group discussion where we showed some film clips and discussed around it. And as Hans-Erik said, we introduced the students with a face-to-face introduction, and then we did a follow-up, an evaluation using questionnaires and focus groups and observations also. And for me as a teacher, from my perspective, this was a very, very positive thing to do. And I'm going to talk about 3 things that I thought was really interesting in this. The first thing is the time, because I expected that it was going to be very time-consuming, this whole thing. But when I do this in a written way, I had to read all the students' assignments, and I have to mark them, and I have to give written feedback, and that takes a lot of time too. So in this assignment, the students come into the pharmacy, and it takes around 20 to 30 minutes for each student to do the whole role play and to give them feedback. So I think that was quite an acceptable time limit. And I also think that this instant feedback that I gave the students, that was a bit unexpected, the best part of the whole thing, because we sat down and I could discuss with them why they had to tell me and motivate. Why did I choose to tell the patient this, and why did I choose not to tell them this? And this I have never seen in the written. I have never had the possibility to discuss this with the students. So that was a really, really good thing for me and for the students too. And then I also had to bring up the third thing, and that is the technical support, because that was very important for me to have the support from Hans-Erik in this case, before and during and after this role play. So that's very important to think about. And from the students' perspective, the students in this project, they could choose if they wanted to do this in Second Life or if they wanted to do it the written way, as we had done before. And around half of the students, they choose to do it in Second Life, and the other half wanted to write instead. And perhaps not surprising, the ones that choose to do this in Second Life, they were very well motivated, and they were enthusiastic and positive, and really, really, really gave positive feedback to me instantly after this role play. They saw a lot of clear advantages with these activities in the virtual world, and they wanted more of this kind of assignments during the program. And they also thought that this with the introduction and support was very, very important. It's quite interesting. They didn't explore any other aspects of Second Life. They just went into the pharmacy, and perhaps they changed clothes and they put on a white coat, and they tried to sit down and stand up so that they could do this assignment, because they had to sit down to do it, and that is a bit tricky if you're not used to that. So they did that and nothing more. And these are some comments from the students. As I said, they were positive. They compared it with Adobe Connect and role-playing in the classroom, which they had tried during the program. And they said that this was easier, and it was easier to give advice to an avatar compared to do it to a friend in the classroom, for example. And they also say that it's a good learning experience and that it felt real, which is really interesting, I think. And of course, some students, they choose to do a written assignment instead, and they are, of course, perhaps even more interesting to hear their voices, and why do they choose to do this in a written way instead. And a lot of students, they said they had problems with the technique, and there were technical obstacles. It could be an unstable internet, it could be the graphics, or it could be the sound. Oops. And these were the technical problems that came up. But then there are some students, and they are not so many. And I think the two last, oh my God, I'm just making such a lot of noise. The two things on last comments, I think they are from the same person, but I have no evidence for that. But at least one person that thinks that this is a very unnecessary, very silly doesn't understand it at all and has a real problem with going into a virtual world. I think it's scary and really they don't want anything to do with it. So you have to have a sort of, you have to deal with this sort of thinking too, of course, from the students. Yes.
Especially the last comment, I think, was interesting. There are of course people who are very negative, and we have to respect that they don't wish to work in a virtual world. It's just not something for them. So we have always offered an alternative to working in Second Life for those who absolutely refuse to do it. There are some challenges, of course, involved in using Second Life. First of all, we have tried with one group of students, giving them, as Hans-Erik explained, an introduction face-to-face when they're on campus for other courses. And we've also tried doing an online introduction where they could look at films, use the help information that's offered. And we found that the face-to-face introduction works much better than doing it online. And I think I intend to interview more students about this. But one of the reasons is that when they're sitting in the classroom and they're learning how to create their avatars and change their hairstyle, they can also discuss their apprehensions and fears with each other. Because we have had in some introductions students who have been extremely negative when they walk in and sit in front of their computer and saying, "No, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do this." And then after half an hour or so it was, "Oh, this is really interesting." So they do, if they can discuss this with their fellow students, they do change their minds very often. So I think that when we continue, we'll be using face-to-face introductions as opposed to online introductions. The question of support is also vital, that for both teachers and students, they must know that they have someone to call, some help they can get when they really can't get their headsets to work or there's something that they can't figure out. And some students have technical problems with particularly sound, also with bandwidth if they're working from home, and graphics if they have, for example, very small computers that they use for carrying around. The graphics were very often insufficient. They just couldn't work in Second Life. And as earlier mentioned, it is a steep learning curve for both students and for teachers. So I really wouldn't advise using this on a shorter course, but since the pharmaceutical science program is a long program, the students study for 3 years, we introduce it in several courses over the period of the program. So for the students, they get used to their avatar, they can begin to identify with it and use it in several different courses for communications. There are always students and teachers who will not participate, and I feel that virtual worlds have a very important function to fill when it comes to immersive, authentic learning environments, particularly for distance students who don't have the same opportunities as campus students. But there are technical problems, particularly with, for example, with iPads, that there is no app for Second Life at the moment. There is also the question of commercial virtual worlds. The companies involved are not always very receptive to the needs of educators. It's a commercial operation for them, and they're not very receptive. So we will be moving into OpenSim this year, which OpenSim is I was going to say it's free, but it's not free. There's no such thing as anything that's free. It's open source, but we will have more control over the process, and we'll also be able to eliminate the question of sexual hopefully content that you can find in Second Life.
Yeah.
So we are moving into OpenSim to make a more stable environment and have better control over it for the students. There are other courses now in the pharmacy program, among others clinical pharmacy, where the students go into the hospital environment that's in Second Life to do patient rounds together with doctors and with pharmacists. And the nursing program and the medical program in UMU have also shown an interest for building a joint center in Odense. We're going to show. Do we have time to show another short film?
Just
Very,
20
very,
minutes.
very short.
It's just 20 minutes or so. We'd like to just show a film of the interaction that Hannah described between the pharmacy and the students.
The students have agreed that we can show this. So. Written.
Hej, hej. Hej, hej. Hej. Men så skönt att få vara här på apoteket. Det har varit så otroligt stressigt idag. Jag har varit med min mamma på sjukhuset hela dagen och det har varit väldigt, väldigt mycket, känner jag. Så att hon har tydligen fått Alzheimers, har vi fått veta idag då. Och hon har fått någon medicin och sådär. Så att det har varit mycket nu på förmiddagen. Men jag har kört hem mamma med bilen och så får vila sig lite. Det blev så lite mycket för henne. Så att nu är jag här själv. Men jag har som...
A short example of what it could look like in
Yes.
Second Life.
And then I ask a lot of questions about the medication after this sort of speech in the beginning. I start asking questions about the medication and how it works and do it have side effects and is it a good medicine and is it the best medicine that she can get? And they have to answer these questions using the knowledge that they have, but they have to explain it to me in a simple way and not use all this pharmaceutical language. They have to simplify and explain to me. And I'm really stressed out and just I don't want my mother to have this medication. I think it's strange and they have to calm me down.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?